When you enter retirement, you probably want to replace your predictable workplace paycheck with a retirement paycheck by combining Social Security and a withdrawal strategy from your investment accounts. I'm going to cover 3 withdrawal strategies. Which is best for you? Stick around to find out. Hi, I'm Scott. I was a college professor for many years, and now I teach couples like you that are close to retirement how to clarify your goals, master your money, and gain confidence as you enter your next chapter. Let's get started. Alex and Samantha are 65 years old. They're ready to retire. They came to me wanting to know how can they have a predictable retirement paycheck, combining their Social Security with a withdrawal strategy from their retirement accounts. I said, great, glad to help you. But before we get started, Samantha wanted to know, can you tell me more about this 4% rule? Because I see that in the media all the time. Sure. So what that says, it was a rule developed in the 1990s that said that if you take 4% of your investment accounts or your savings the first year of retirement, you can continue to increase that by inflation each and every year, and your money should last 30 years. Well, that's a great rule of thumb, and it gets a lot of traction in the media. But I explained that I think it's a little too conservative. So I showed them in my retirement planning software what that would do if they withdrew $40,000 per year from their $1 million retirement account, so 4%. It shows that they have a 97% chance of having their money last the rest of their lives, which sounds good, sounds enticing, right? And a 50% chance, or an even money chance, that they will die with $3.6 million. Well, that's probably too much for most people. They're going to say, what? How am I going to have $3.6 million left over? Well, that means that they didn't spend money enough during retirement. So the 4% rule has a potential concern of not allowing you to live your best life, and you end up with more money than you intended to. So I reran the numbers for them at 5%, or $50,000 for that first year. That had a healthy success rate, so that was looking pretty good. Well, Samantha says, all right, well, if we can do 5%, what would 6% look like? So I ran the numbers with 6%, and it turns out their success rate dropped to 68%, with an even money chance of dying with $1 million. Well, a 68% success rate, not quite as reliable as we might like. Not terrible, but I really like to see that be between 70 to 85%. Well, what we're demonstrating here is the first withdrawal strategy called the inflation adjusted. So we can see in this chart, if we started with $40,000 in this example, our expenses or withdrawal would increase steadily over the next 30 years of retirement based on inflation. Now, of course, it would go up and down based on inflation, but in our projections, we're looking at 2.5% on average going forward. So Samantha says, all right, so 68% success rate withdrawing 6%. Is there anything that we can do differently to still allow us to withdraw that 6%, but increase our chances of success? I said, yeah, so let's talk about strategy number 2, called retirement stages. Now, we know from studies that people generally start to spend less in retirement over the years. They start to have less mobility, less interest, less energy, and so it's probably not very realistic, like a lot of our simple projections would do, to say we're going to keep spending money just like we did in year 1. So in the retirement stages strategy, we divide the retirement lifetime, I guess, into 3 stages: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. So roughly 10 years in each, 65 to 75 for the go-go, 75 to 85, and then 85 into 95. Well, to simulate that in the software, we can see in this particular figure that every 10 years, we're going to ratchet down our spending a little bit to simulate this. Now, in reality, it would be more graceful over time as we start to spend less during retirement. But you can see here in this stair step, if we expanded that to a 30-year graph, we would see 2 stair steps, one at age 75 and then again at age 85. Now, in between those 3 stair steps, we continue to increase with inflation. Well, the end result means that we spend less money than we would have if we simply stuck with inflation each and every year. And that's what we're trying to do here in this particular scenario, because remember, we were at 68% success rate. So if we replace inflation adjusted as a withdrawal rate with retirement stages as a withdrawal rate, our success rate increases to 76%, and we've got an even money chance of having 1.5 million left over. Well, that's pretty good. That's a pretty reasonable expectation. And this is withdrawing 6% per year, or what, 60,000, that's 5,000 per month. Well, Alex says, okay, so I understand this. If we use inflation adjusted, we're not going to be able to spend as much as if we use the retirement stages adjustment. What else do you got? Is there anything that would allow us to maybe withdraw more than 6%? So, well, the third strategy I want to explain to you is called Guardrails. Guardrails says rather than the two previous examples that we looked at, where year to year it's generally increasing by inflation, and we can project that out for the next 30 years, so you've got some consistency on what that retirement paycheck will be. Guardrails says, let's adjust that a little bit. Most years we're going to increase by inflation, but if the stock market has a particularly good year, we're going to use that to your advantage and give you a little bump in raise. Not a big bump, but maybe a 10% raise that particular year. However, if the stock market has a particularly bad year, then we're going to have to cut back on your expenses. Once again, not a lot, maybe 10%. Maybe that means that at least in the first 10 years, the go-go years, your international travel might become domestic travel. Your domestic travel might become staying around the house. Maybe that means that you eat out less. So not a big lifestyle change, but to some degree. Well, it turns out these modest cutbacks, since they only happen when the stock market goes down, which is less often than when the stock market goes up, this adjustment allows your dollars to go further. It increases our chances that this plan is going to work. Once again, withdrawing 6% or $60,000 per year, our success rate shoots up to 99% using Guardrails from that 76% earlier. And we've got an even money chance of having 1.8 million left over at the end of their lives. So Alex picks up on that and says, okay, well, that's a really high percentage. We don't need it to be that high, right? So let's increase our spending even more. Let's go from $5,000 per month to $6,000 per month. What would that do? So $6,000 per month times 12 is $72,000 per year that we're going to be withdrawing from our savings in year one. And then throughout the years, adjust up and down as necessary based on the stock market performance. If we did that, our success rate drops a little bit, makes sense, right? Because we're spending more money each time, but it only drops down to about 92%, 94%. And we still have a pretty good chance of having some inheritance at the end of our lives. So we've looked at three different strategies. We started off with a very conservative 4% strategy using inflation adjustment, where we were only withdrawing $40,000 per year, went up through retirement stages, which allowed us to retrieve $60,000 per year and still have pretty good high confidence. And then we ended up with Guardrails that allows us to retrieve $72,000 per year. Once again, pretty good confidence with the understanding that we can sometimes have raises and sometimes have to cut back on our life. So if you want some consistency, Guardrails is not for you. But if you're willing to accept the fact that there's going to be more good years than bad years, and that allows you to take out more money in year one and enjoy those, particularly during the go-go years, maybe Guardrails are something for you to consider. I make these videos to help you clarify your goals, maximize your dollars, reduce taxes during retirement, and hopefully increase the confidence that you have as you enter the next phase. And in fact, I've queued up another video that you might like as well. As an advice-only planner, I don't manage your investments. I don't charge an AUM fee. Instead, what I do for a flat fee is work together with you to create a retirement plan that you can implement on your own. It includes actions you can take now to increase your confidence that your retirement plan is going to work out fine. So check out the link down below to learn more about me and my approach to retirement planning.